So Tony, you have an interesting background. You've run 132 marathons. So you have seen a lot, going back as far as the early 80s?
Yes, 1982 I ran my first marathon.
Today I would like to introduce Tony Reed, who is the former executive director of the National Black Marathoners Association, as well as co-founder of that group, and a soon-to-be honoree by the Boston Marathon for his contributions to marathon running. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you. It's great to
have you.
It's great to be here.
Thank you, thank you. I've been wanting to have Tony on for some time, and then it just became obvious that we should talk about, I think, the changes that have been happening in the majors in recent years, especially with what I consider to be these insane qualifying time cutoffs. In particular, more recently with the New York City Marathon. If you watch the channel, you know I kind of mouthed off about the people having to run something like nearly 23 minutes or thereabouts faster than the official minimum qualifying time they had to meet, because there have been so many applicants. Apparently this was 2026, a historic year for the New York City Marathon, because there's something like 240,000 applicants, which is apparently a first. And of those who were accepted this month, I believe it was like about 1% of the people who applied got in. So what's up with that? Why? Can you speak to why these cutoff times? And it's not just New York, but Boston. They've adjusted their times. Chicago has tightened up its standards as well. No cutoff. They're not doing that yet, but that day may come. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, I look at it in terms of, I guess, the ultimate event that requires a time qualification would be the Olympic Games. And when you look at the Olympics, they have them, of course, every 4 years. But what they do is they actually will adjust the qualifying times, again, for example, for the Olympic marathon, based off of the number of people that have met the old qualifying time and looking at the size of the field. So the Olympic qualifying time for the marathon, and even for the 100 meters, for example, keep getting a little bit faster based on the number of people that can meet that qualifying time. So I kind of see the same thing happening with the majors. The more people get into distance running, the faster people get running marathons, the lower they're having to make their qualifying times. If not, then essentially everyone will be able to get in to run the races. When they set their qualifying standard, they do it based off of based off of the fastest times, for example, that have been run, over the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And so they know who the elite runners are and know approximately how many of them can make that qualifying time. I would imagine with the majors, they may not know how many runners can meet, quote, last year's qualifying time until they start getting all this information in. So they're having to make their adjustments, to me, after the fact, so to speak, rather than before the fact, because they don't have the information necessary to turn around and say, well, okay, we know that X number of hundreds of thousands of runners met the qualifying time. We estimate this number are going to be applying for our race this particular year. So therefore, we need to lower our qualifying time. So it's something they really may not know until they actually get the applications in the first place. Maybe they need to bring in someone from mathematical modeling background who can plug all this stuff into AI and it can predict perhaps what the qualifying time should be far enough in advance rather than waiting for it to be kind of after the fact.
You know, some people have argued, I've seen this online on social media, that basically they're saying, hey, I deserve to get into New York, or I deserve to get into Boston because I met that qualifying time, and there's plenty of spaces. It's just that you're not allocating them to people who have met those times. You're allocating it to, you know, charity runners, or, you know, maybe people who are coming in on a tour, or influencers, running influencers. You know, when the news came out that, wow, you know, you had to run more than 20 minutes faster than your qualifying time to get into New York, my first thought was, and I posted a little video and I called these cutoff times insane. I still think that they are insane. Don't get me wrong. However, with some thought, I have come to conclude this is a choice that a runner makes. You can run New York, maybe Chicago, Boston, you know, one of the major marathons, and you can choose to try to find a way to get into those races, but you can also choose other races. These are not the only marathons in the world.
My take on it is that they don't own the race. The race is owned by that particular running club or that particular running organization. And they can make whatever rules that they want to for their event. Again, it's just like me going into a restaurant, they'll have a sign that says no shirt, no shoes, no service. It's their business, they set the rules. If I don't want to abide by their rules, I can just go to another restaurant.
And there are plenty of marathons where you can just pay and go run the race. I did officially time qualify to run the New York City Marathon this year. I chose not to even waste time applying for a number of reasons. And one of them was that, frankly, I didn't think I was going to get in, even though I time qualified, because of the historic cutoff times that New York has applied to people who try to get in through a time qualified entry. The other reason is because of so many runners, hearing from so many runners that the course is congested. Now, apparently it isn't for everyone, but depending maybe on where you fall in terms of your pace, for some people they literally said that they could barely walk, let alone run at points. And that was just, I'm not doing marathons because of that. I don't want to have that. To me, it's an aggravation. I want to be able to try to perform at the height of my abilities.
I just saw something recently where they were saying the London Marathon was looking at running on 2 days.
Yes.
And, you know, again, it's because of the popularity, it's all about supply and demand. And I think the more people hear about a particular marathon, the more people will want to go to run it. Personally, I've run in the larger marathons, but I've also run in 10 marathons that had fewer than 50 people in them. And I had just as much enjoyment running those as running the larger marathons. That's the beauty about the running community, is that there's something for everyone, whether you want to run in a race with 40,000 people or run in a marathon with only 40 people. So I've run in 10 marathons with fewer than 50 people in them, and I had a great time. And the beauty about it is we went places where you just can't take 50,000 people through.
Tony, you have an interesting background. You've run 132 marathons. So you have seen a lot, going back as far as the early 80s?
Yes, 1982 I ran my first marathon.
Last year at the National Black Marathoners Association Summit at the One City Marathon, I asked Tony why he's run so many marathons. Here's his answer.
What motivates you to run 132 marathons? I mean, where does that come from?
ignorance.
Don't know better.
No, the way it started out for me was, and I live in Dallas, so we have the Dallas Marathon in December and the Fort Worth Marathon, which is just about 30, 40 miles away, in February. So at the time I was married, and I couldn't justify spending money just to go someplace to run. So for 20 years, I was always running the Dallas Marathon and the Fort Worth Marathon with the clear understanding, training for the marathon in December, I would start in July and train, and that training made it so that I didn't gain weight during Thanksgiving. And then with the Cutoff Marathon in February, that took me through Christmas, New Year's, and Valentine's Day, as far as all these times for gaining weight. So I literally did that for 20 years, just doing those two marathons. And with the clear understanding that by the time I would turn 50, my kids would be out the house, they would not need me anymore for anything other than writing checks. And they were surprised when they found out that didn't happen. And so I decided the year I turned 50, I wanted to run a marathon a month, and each one had to be in a different state or country. So that took me up through knocking out, again, 12 states. And then at our summit in 2009, which is when I ran my 100th marathon, that's when I started meeting Nate from Atlanta, Fred Davis III. And these guys had run marathons in all 50 states, and Angela Ivory. She was the first African-American female to run marathons in all 50 states. So I met them, and they were like, you need to do 50 states. So just from meeting them is when I went ahead and did that. So having done 50 marathons in Texas, that was my first goal. Then you add marathon in all 50 states, that got me up to 100 marathons. And then 7 continents, so that puts me now at least 107. And then the others were just, they were just out there.
At 70 years old, Tony is still running.
Things were a lot different back then.
I would think so.
I can remember it was, weather was very, very cold that morning. And when we crossed the finish line, they handed us a little index card.
Where was this?
This was at the Fort Worth, this was a Cowtown Marathon in Fort Worth, Texas. So they handed us a little index card, and on this card, you were to write your name, your age, your gender, and your finishing time. Now, I strongly encourage anyone to know how challenging that is to go outside for about 3 or 4 hours in the cold and write that information down. And considering you're sprinting to get across the finish line, you're glancing up at the clock, you don't exactly remember the exact hour, minute, and second. But somehow they expect you to remember all that information, write it down, and turn it in. And when I look at like 40 or 50,000 people running in a marathon today, I can imagine that many people queued up having to write all this information down and turn it in. And then you don't get the official race results for maybe a couple of months after the race is over. And so now you cross the finish line, you go to your smartphone, look up and see your official finishing time.
Yeah.
So things have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, I read recently that the first New York City Marathon, which was held in, I believe it was 1970, had something like a little over 120 participants, 127 participants, and I don't want to get this wrong, but maybe it was 55 finishers, and they just ran loops around Central Park. Now, this year is the 50th anniversary of the running of the 5 boroughs in New York City. So I believe it was 1976, Ted Corbitt, who is considered he's
considered the father of distance running, modern day distance running. Yes.
He is one of the founders of the New York Road Runners, and he set that 5 borough course, from what I understand. it was supposed to be like a kind of a one-off, and it stuck. So here we are 50 years later, and that may also be part of the appeal why there were so many people wanting to apply because of the legendary, historic status of this race, that it's the 50th. One quick thing before we go, speaking of Ted Corbitt, and back to your role as a co-founder of the National Black Marathoners Association, is there anything that you can share or would like to share about Mr. Corbitt and his role in, marathoning and the marathon culture that we have today in America?
Oh, yes. I believe he was the second or third person in the world to complete over 100 marathons. He was also instrumental in founding the Roadrunners Club of America, in addition to the New York Roadrunners. So, and he was the one that got a lot of us interested in the ultra marathons, for example.
Wow, okay.
So he was, pretty instrumental in getting people interested into a lot of different things, multi-day races, running long distances on a daily basis, journaling, for example. So yes.
I was in New York on a very short trip earlier this year, and I accidentally wound up on Ted Corbitt Loop in Central Park on a snowy, well, it was after the snow, but it was still snow on the ground and slush and everything. And my GPS, for whatever crazy reason, put me on that loop. I was going to a museum, so why I had to walk through Central Park, and I didn't know what I was doing. But anyway, so there I was. I look up and I see Ted Corbitt Loop, and it was a magical moment, because there were so many people on this very cold day in conditions that I wouldn't consider ideal for running, who were out there running. And it says to me, there is something magical, and it felt magical, about running in New York City. It was an electrifying environment. You felt, or I should say that I felt, the magic, the energy, and I feel like I understand why there is so much fascination and appeal for so many people to want to run that race, just to be in that energy. So I get that, and maybe it'll happen for me one day. But right now, where I sit, I just do not see myself running with 60,000 other people. So, and the extent of it for me, and the magic of New York, maybe when it's not snowy and it's not slush outside, that maybe I'll head back to New York and run in Central Park and on the loop, and that'll be enough. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
it's a good loop to run. I enjoy running there whenever I'm in town.
well, it sounds like it's got Tony's endorsement, so I need to check it out. So I want to thank you so much for being on, and
Thank you for having me.
thank you so much. We really appreciated your time.
Okay. Well, thank you. I enjoy it.